That is a camera. This is going to be posted on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. It won't be every time. Sometimes I'll do the other classes. But yeah, I didn't want to mess with it yesterday, but I'm messing with it right now. Here we go. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have your attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm just doing my very first recording. I'm going to post it up on YouTube. Did you not get a chance to talk to these guys already? Okay, actually, you know what? You're being recorded. So, this is going to go to the at-home kiddos, too. All right.
Good morning, juniors. I'm super glad you're back. We have been all teachers, all of us been working so hard for this day, and we are so happy to see you here. So I do want to go over what social distancing and masks and all that means here, okay? Because the best way for us to stay is by doing exactly what we're doing. And make sure you have it on, have your mask on all the time. And I usually have my mask on, so in between classes I forgot to grab. Because masks are safe everywhere. Okay. So, I want you guys to know that when we mean social distancing, you guys can tell we rearrange all the rooms. So just your desks are further apart. When you are walking in the hallways, you'll hear me a lot. It's hard, and this is hard for, not quite 6 feet apart.
You don't think?
So the thing is, though, is when we're in the hallways, and it's the same for adults, like I'm not harping on kids, it's the same for all of us. We're all trying to figure this out. And we tend to walk shoulder to shoulder with our friends, and we're talking, we're not paying attention to what's going on around us, because we've never had to do that before. But when you're in the halls, there aren't that many kids, because we have learned that we have it divided at middle school the first half of the 5-minute class and high school the second half. But if there is any congestion, you're going to have to pretend like you're in elementary school, get in single file real quick, and then move out. Like, I don't want you to have to be in single file line. But if there is congestion, like maybe around lunchtime, and if you hear me yelling, stay to the right, it's because I'm watching for you. If you're not used to doing this. So then let's talk about lunch. Lunchtime. If you're staying here, let's talk about one last campus for your seniors. So I had a group yesterday go off. They thought that they could make it on time. I think I had one group make it back on time and the other two were late. Your lunch is only 30 minutes. So you're not going to have a lot of time so far. All right? And then you can't sit in your car anymore. So I had kids yesterday, they were by themselves sitting in their car on air conditioner running. And I learned 8 years ago when I started being a principal, that kids eating in their car or eating in their cars at lunch isn't a good idea because some kids choose to do things they shouldn't be doing in their cars at lunch. So that's why it's just a hard and fast rule. I had some kids come to me after school yesterday and say, Miss Anderson, can we keep a folding chair in the back of our car and then we can sit in the folding chair and do a social distance circle? I'm like, that's a great idea. Why not? So I think you'll find, I am certain that tomorrow there's going to be a lot of kids in the parking lot or on the cars with their chairs. Funny. But whatever. So it's not that I want to be all, police state about this, but I do want you guys to be good. And so if that seems like a reasonable thing, then you want to do that, go for that. When you're eating lunch, of course, you're going to have to take your masks off. That's why it's so important to do that 6 feet apart. And the rule of thumb is exactly what you guys did. I'm terrible at measuring. I'm going to tinkle that down. So while she and I are not 6 feet tall, so this doesn't work. They're not 6 feet apart. So take a step away, and now physically you should be 6 feet apart. And then sit wherever you're sitting, enjoy your lunch, take your mask off, enjoy being mask free. But if you get up and start moving around to go on a walk, what do we typically do? We typically move in closer again. And if you are walking around and you forget to put your mask back on, I'm going to remind you. Again, just for safety. And until we get used to it. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? If you're not sure why we are doing, I know for me, like I'm a rule follower, I really am, but if I think a rule is stupid, I have a hard time following. That's my nature. So I like to know the why. And if you're one of those people, if you want to know why we're doing something, just ask, and I'm happy to tell you. Because there's always a reason to do everything. Okay? Maybe walk encouraged you. No. Oh. And some kids yesterday just chose to put their mask on because I was in the when I had to tell the same people 3 times. I get not to get back. But I'm good with giving friendly reminders. If you can stay apart, keep it off. That's right. Okay? Any other questions?
Okay.
Well, you're awesome, and you're so glad to see you. Honestly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, I'm recording. I'm going to be recording the next period. Make sure you remind me to use this device to turn it off. That will create the recording for 11th grade, which I will then take and post on YouTube. And then I'll make one for 12th grade, 4th period. And then there's an elective class in here. I don't know if you guys are in here for an elective class, 5th period. And then I got the 9th graders after lunch. You'll be doing your temperature check. Did Mrs. Rao give you a temperature check? First period? Yeah, so they do that again after lunch. And yeah, and then I've got 9th graders, and I only got one section of 9th graders because I've got a larger 11th grade class. It doesn't seem like a larger 11th grade class because there's only like a handful of you guys. And then I got 2 government classes, 10th graders, for the end of the day. So here we go. First day, a lot of different things going on, right? I'm glad to see you guys back here. I'm committed, right? I signed on for this year, and it sounds like you guys are pretty committed because you're here. I mean, folks at home are going to be doing a lot of work too and so forth, but they won't have to be wearing masks when they're at home, and we'll be doing everything we can to keep them on board and so forth. As we move forward, a lot of the things you guys are going to be doing are all the same. So, and I will be communicating with you, obviously here, where you can ask questions and so forth, right? We don't have to go through all the craziness of a Zoom. When you have a question, you just like, and I can't mute you or anything like that, you know, so you can ask your question. But we will be using the Google Classroom, certainly for the at-home students. But also you guys, because here's the deal. The hybrid thing doesn't work as well for me. You'll get to see how it works for some of the other classes. My classes typically, you guys know this, we do a lot in class, so typically I don't have to give as much homework, all right? I mean, you know that. So one of the challenges is, to the best that I possibly can, get all of that content that I've been doing in 90-minute classes into a 45-minute classes. Yow. Some of those things will work themselves out in the sense that, like, if I intersperse, you know, videos and so forth in the class, in a 90-minute class, those will be for you on your at-home day. Okay, so that's one of the things you'll be doing in at-home. And I'll post the links for those on the Google Classroom. And I can point over right there. There's the Google Classroom code. You can write it on your paper. I didn't have it when I made the paper initially. Lowercase, there you see, right up there on the board, JE2KOMI. That'll get you hooked into the new Google Classroom for 11th grade, okay? So I know some of you guys were very diligent in following up with the Google Classroom because I didn't use it much before last quarter. And then last quarter, yeah, I was using the Google Classroom quite a bit. Okay, so that's also where I'm going to be posting this video. And so those students they've been texting, they were sending messages and so forth, but they'll all have, I think I've got 6. So we can say, yeah, if you guys want to, you can say hello to Noah and Sammy and Ella and Michael and Caden and Adrian. You want to say hello to them? Hi. Yeah, you're like, whatever. So anyway, there's the Google Classroom code. And there'll be links to various different videos I can think of, like, for example, like the unit that we did. Remember the civil rights unit that we did, right? And I did the lecturing and so forth, and then I posted the link for students to watch both of those so that they can be diligent and follow through and so forth. Though some units it has that, some it doesn't. I mean, there's all kinds of various different interesting changes. One thing, and I know some of you, and you communicate it because you're very assertive, you're like, what is this going to be like? Are all the teachers going to, like, give us I don't know what your day is going to be like when you're actually in school. I imagine it's going to be pretty full. In here, we're going to be like boom, boom, boom. Okay? Daily warm-up, don't got the time for it. Plus, it's more paper and handing things, and I'm trying to alleviate that. Formative question at the end of the period, no. Too much time, and we're going to alleviate more paper handing back and forth and so forth. Okay? So when you come in here, typically it's going to be like, take out your notes, boom! So for those of you guys who like to take notes on paper, continue doing so. For those of you guys who like to take notes electronically, continue doing so. Here's another thing I'm going to save as far as like transferring stuff and ickiness and so forth. I'm not going to collect your notes. So kind of like that last unit, I don't collect your notes. And that's actually kind of the way it works previously. In 9th grade, notes are worth so much, and then it goes down in 10th, and so really by the time you like get into 11th to 12th grade, it's like, why am I taking notes in Mr. Hansen's class if not to get points? Think about that question. And what's the answer to that question? Like what? Like what are the value of the notes that you take on a unit to help prepare for the test? And not only that unit test, but for the IB exams coming up in May of your senior year, which maybe happens in May of your senior year. We shall see. It's okay, Jana. We're gonna get you through this. And actually, if you look through, some of you guys are like, I have a piece of paper in front of me. I'm going to scan it already. And so some of you guys, if you look and you're like EA, which means external assessment, IB did us all, the teachers, a favor, at least for the seniors. And I imagine they might extend that as well for you guys when you're seniors, because your junior year is being impacted right now with this whole COVID thing. They've reduced certain requirements for the different courses. For history, I looked at the reduced requirements. I'm like, that's good. I mean, you look at there, it says EA paper 2, usually 2 essays on 2 topics, only 1 essay for 2021. And maybe that, I'll be keeping an eye out to see if that applies to you guys as well for 2022. That's a huge thing. I mean, I gave an entire unit, second semester, senior year, for students to prepare to have additional choices so that they could write a paper 2 essay. I don't feel that compunction now when it comes to that. So that's some of those things. It's like, well, you know, I can only teach 45 minutes, but at the same time, good news for seniors, I don't have to teach as much for them. So there's different kinds of things that are coming along on that. As far as your notes, take them, make sure they're good. If you need to rely on other people's notes, that's fine. Probably best, because who knows if we have to go back to straight online. Watch the videos. Be self-responsible, right? So that when you do have to write an essay, say on Martin Luther King Jr. and somebody else, you actually know who those people are because you've watched the videos, right? You don't get tripped up by something like, I don't know who that person is. Who was that sheriff from Albany, Georgia, that had a name that was like a girl's name? Because I got an essay from a student that referred to that sheriff as a girl, when in fact, if you just watched the videos, you would have known that that was a man. Anyway, so when we in here, one of the things I like about actually physically having you guys in here, some of the times that we're not doing notes, we're going to have like quizzes and tests on what you know in your head. I am not going to have that cluster mess up thing that I did when I tried to like, Mrs. Rao, how do I put together an online test? Oh my gosh, that was messed up in so many different ways on my part, and I felt really bad because it put so many of you guys, mostly the second day group, in difficult positions because all of a sudden some of them had available to them inside information which would guarantee a perfect score, and half of them got perfect scores. I'm like, really? And yeah, that was really disappointing. I did hear from one student, who responded to a message from me, because every once in a while in life you have relationships. I value the relationship as a teacher and student. I mean, you guys might be like, whatever, it's 1 year. Some of you guys, it might be 4 years long relationship. I value it greatly, especially in COVID times. I'm like, wow, we're all taking additional risks. So when you have relationships, one of those things in life, let's say you make an important relationship, a spousal relationship, and you're like, Mr. Hanson, are you relating a teacher and a student to two spouses? In many respects, no, but in some respects, yes. You need to be honest. You need to have as a basis of that relationship an honest component of integrity. And like for example, if you have a spouse someday and they're like, oh, they're out of town, what are you going to do? Put a tag on them so you know exactly what they're doing? No. I mean, you've got to have a basis of trust because it's like, otherwise it just kind of gets in the way. And sometimes it's like some people are like, it doesn't matter. To me, it matters. I like to have that. And actually, everybody I talked to in here, physically in this room, at this time, did not have the benefit of being able to get a perfect score. Some of you guys reported to me at the time. You're like, Mr. Hanson, all the answers are popping up, and they're like, what are we doing? And you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a problem. And I knew the next day how much of a problem it was, because as I saw, there's a timestamp on everybody taking the test, and then there's the first person that got 100. There's a timestamp, and then it was like ding, 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 and half of that group did. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's tough because you're like, oh my gosh, is it such a big deal? And my daughter's like, people do that. I'm like, whatever. For me, it was a big deal. And moving forward, I hope to be in a position where students would feel comfortable to, I don't know, just own up, to move on. And like, I messed up. I forgive you. Hello? That's how I deal with people. I don't go, really? You were wrong, and you will suffer for the rest of your life. That's not how I roll, okay? That's not how I roll. Oh, and by the way, there's little things like when you need to get a recommendation for a job or college and so forth and so on. I've had so many of those over the years, and students will come up and I'm like, let me see, they were a good student in class. More important, they worked hard and they had a good relationship with me as far as positive integrity and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I'll write a recommendation for you. If there's an issue that's still unresolved on that critical integrity piece, I'll be like, maybe let's talk to somebody else. Maybe. So keep that in mind. And it was interesting because on another thing, I'll put this out to you, and then I'm going to be passing this out for an opportunity to give a little bit of feedback or comments or reflections or what have you on stuff. And it had to do with the requirements. I can tell you this right now. You're going to be going, really? That's nice. You're going to work harder as juniors than any other junior class that I have had. But the payoff is, for your senior year, you won't have to work as hard if you're taking IB history for the 2 years. And you're like, what? You're like, what the heck are you talking about? Because, actually, I'm going to have you write something down because I messed it up. If you look on where it says, about a third of the way down, IB history, HL assessments, there's a bullet point. The first bullet point is IA, historical investigation, work finishes 12th grade. That's the old form. Scratch that out and put work starts and finishes 11th grade. Oh, yes, and there's a reason for that. There's a number of reasons for that, okay? And I'll give that to you. So you're going to be writing an IA, an internal assessment. For all your IB classes, you're like, what's the IA for your class, Mrs. Rao, et cetera, et cetera. And they will tell you. It's something you do actually during those 2 years, as opposed to the essays at the end of your senior year, okay? For mine, it's a research paper, right? And you actually get to pick the topic. We'll sit down, individual conversation, and you'll pick the topic. It was great. It's 2,300 words, so it's like a mini extended essay. If you haven't heard about the extended essay yet, you will. And Mrs. Rao, she will help you along and train you on doing the extended essay, which is a 4,000-word thing. And you'll get started on that, I think, second semester of your junior year. I've pushed it up earlier in the junior year for this reason. The other subjects can't do that as much. They have to teach you certain content before they can get to their IAs. I know especially like biology, I think Spanish and so forth. For history, the topics you choose don't necessarily relate to stuff we're learning in class. So we're doing a lot of 20th century history. You could do a research paper on something in the 18th or 19th centuries. Ask for each IB course what it would be. They will tell you. It varies. I know in my head, because I used to be the coordinator, I was the one that brought IB to North Star once upon a time. There is a research paper in some of those, and others it's a little bit different. But we'll let you and that teacher figure out what the specifics are. For here, it's a research paper. In fact, it's, like I say, it's similar to the extended essay, but a little smaller. We're going to do that this year. First semester, you'll do your first draft, and it'll count a big part for your grade. And it will put you in a good position, and you should do well on it. If you don't, I'll tell you, wow, this isn't really that good. You need to fix it up some, because I only get to have one official meeting with you about the paper you turned in. And we'll set that up at the beginning of second semester. And then you'll make the changes and so forth and turn in your final draft second semester. And then it's done. Normally, students on the IB diploma track have more work to do senior year. I'm going to do you the favor of moving part of that up a little bit early because I can. Plus, who knows where we are going to be at the end of this year, going into next year? Who knows? It's better to have it done early than later, right? So as you go into your senior year, you can be like, I got that history IA research paper. I banked it. It's good. And you're like, well, how important could that be? Last year's seniors, you know how they did? You know how they did on their essays in May? Trick question. There were no essays for them to do in May. All of that got canceled. So what did IB base the IB scores for those students on? Pretty much it was their IAs. For my class, something that normally is, 20% of their IB score thing counted as like 100%. Oh my gosh. And I actually felt good about that because my message, along with the other IB teachers here, is it's your IA. It's like your opportunity to get a head start in a race, to get a head start in a volleyball or basketball competition, to get additional points. You have so much control over it ahead of time. So why not? Do a good job on it, right? And so that was my message to my students. Last year, seniors took it to heart. There were 2 seniors, I remember, their first drafts were like, they needed some work. I mean, like really work, a lot of work before I could even sit down and talk with them. I'm like, here's some general guidelines. Fix it up, and then we'll talk. And they did. They both passed the history. In fact, they both got the IB diploma. Of all the students at North Star last year, all but one got the IB diploma. Of my 22 students in history, all but one, so like 96% got the IB history. It's like, what is that worth? I was having a conversation with one of your classmates yesterday, like, why do I need to do IB? I'm like, you need to know there's value here. Because if you're going to college, you want to get college credit. Well, you can get college credit when you go to college, or many of you guys, how many of you guys, raise your hand, have gotten some college credit already through particularly like your concurrent courses, right? And that actually adds up because typically college you need over, say, 4 years, 120 credits over like 8 semesters. BSU, IB history, pass, 6 credits. That's like the equivalent of starting your freshman year instead of taking 5 classes a semester, just 4. A little less workload. So, I mean, there is a nice payoff on that. And we've got a system here that helps students to be successful, right? So you guys are in good hands that way. But at the same time, I was thinking, you know what? I remember when like the capstone project was being discussed and Mrs. Anderson had, real in-depth conversations with Mr. and Mrs. Ostrowski and Ms. Hulsey, because those are the teachers real critical of as far as that. And ultimately, I think about half of the juniors are doing that, right? So they're looking at all kinds of different variations. I remember there was one component, I'm like, that's interesting. The idea was having, instead of 2 years of IB history, 1 year of history to meet the state requirement, although neighboring schools and so forth were doing 2 years of U.S. history. But nevertheless, 1 year of U.S. history, and then the senior year don't have U.S. history, have a little bit like a lighter load and so forth. And I initially was like, And actually the students were like, well, I remember, because I brought that up to you guys as far as like, do you know this, and what do you think about this? And one of the questions the students would be like, well, are you going to teach that non-IB history class? I'm like, No, I'm already teaching 4 different courses. I don't need to teach them, so I think there's some students, though, who might, in the course of things, look and go, you know what, there's so much going on, and I've got so much, and da-da-da-da. It really would be nice to have that option of just not taking IB history either year and just taking history like 11th or 12th. And so as I was looking at everything over the summer, I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I want the options to be available for individual students the best they want. If you're going full IB diploma, if you made that choice, I mean, that's part of it. We'll be doing everything we can to help get you guys ready for that. If you're going the capstone route, the IB history, you do that, and I think I'll put you in great position. But I don't want to force you. So I said to Miss Anderson, I don't want to force them. Although it's difficult because we were kind of bouncing around. I talked to her yesterday, and she said, well, did you know IDLA? You guys know about IDLA, right? That's like the online school. They're swamped. Really, I wonder why their enrollment has gone like through the roof. Because we've got North Star students who are at home, who are North Star students, but there are other students, maybe some of your former classmates, who are doing these online education programs. And IDLA, they've got a backlog of students who want to sign up for individual courses or even like a whole thing. Maybe some of you guys are aware of that. So even some of the North Star students are having a hard time getting into that. They're still hiring teachers at IDLA because they just have such a demand for that. So it sounds like if you're at North Star, you're doing the IB history. Although, you guys are students. You have a voice. If you wanted to have a conversation with Mrs. Rao and say, really, 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 can I just not come in first period? Have English third period. And, you have to do 4 years of English. That's a high school requirement. But the Idaho requirement for U.S. history is 1. And I want to teach and be here for the students who really want to be here. And if you look at the situation and go, that's not for me, I'm okay with that. It's like when I was teaching at Capital. Capital's high school, it's kind of like North Star is now. When I was at Capital, there was a mixed population of like students taking lots of AP courses and students taking no AP courses, or students taking 1 or 2. So I had kids in my class that were of all kinds of different varieties. So anyway, that's my thoughts to you on that. And I want to give you an opportunity, if you don't really have any comment or you don't have anything that you wanted to say, I've got this little feedback form here, return feedback. Here's what I wrote. COVID-19 certainly interrupted the learning relationship between us last year. As we enter into the beginning of an all-important 2-year IB history course, I would like to invite you to share your reflections with me on your level of commitment to the work required for this class, or any leftover issues from last year. There's an open door there that you'd like to comment about, or any other issues you want to present. So you can take a couple minutes or so and get some feedback on that, and I'll come around and get that for you. I'm not anticipating because of, I know kind of where you guys were in like that episode last year. So I'm not anticipating in here any true confessions or anything like that. They're like, we need to restore our relationship, Mr. Henson. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I didn't get any of those yesterday. But nice. Still working on it. Maybe during our one-to-one conversations over the history topic, who knows. Yeah. But you guys, and I responded to Gianna because she wrote an email to teachers and so forth about concerns. I'm going to do everything I can because I'm very student-oriented as far as like trying to keep balance. And you guys are pretty good about expressing when you feel like things are, I don't have control over everything at North Star and all your different classes. But for me, right from the get-go with IB, it's like they're equal components. HL courses like history, English, some of you guys are doing HL art maybe, or HL math. I don't know if you guys are trying that. Most of you, it's HL biology if you're doing that, or chemistry, I don't know. Is that doing HL chemistry? Okay. And then there's the other IB courses, and so for success, programs try to balance them out so that no one particular course is just like really hitting you hard. So for my part, in the past, I've been able to get students to success without an inordinate amount of outside work. So, does that sound fun? How many of you guys have ever had an inordinate amount of schoolwork? Yeah, along with everything else you're doing in your life to try and keep a balance and like sanity and things like that. I mean, yeah, sanity, it's good. I like that. It helps keep me balanced. So, yeah. So I'll be looking out for you. And if you have any concerns and so forth, talk to me. It'll be okay. Some of you guys got challenges with reading quizzes and so forth. You'll be fine. Concentrate on those. Take really good notes. Ask questions. I'll probably be asking you more questions just because there's fewer of you in the class. But definitely with it, when you have like outside work and so forth, do those. Okay? All right, let's get that. How are we doing on time? Oh my gosh. We got like 10 minutes. We are going to be assigning, oh, that's a big no comment. Got your name there. That's fine. I'll be assigning these textbooks to you probably next time. So you'll take those home and have some reading for you. I've also got this book, which is kind of a leftish sort of view of history by Howard Zinn. And we use a couple chapters from that. The nice thing is it's all online for free. So it gives you a different perspective a little bit of history, Mr. Howard Zinn. Yeah, okay, all right. Yes. 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 So I know I was joking with Mrs. Anderson. She came in and talked to the other 11th graders during first period about